So today I'm going to be showing you how to replace your front brake pads and rotors on your Infiniti J30. This one's a 97.
Hey guys, I'm Jordan and you're watching Fixbook. After watching this video, your car problems stand about as much a chance as this laptop does against my hot leg. Now, make sure you stay tuned so you can see what happened to the laptop at the end of this video. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment down below.
Okay guys, and here are the tools I used in today's project. Let's see, I have an impact, but you can use a breaker bar or a crossbar, and a 21mm socket to remove your lug nuts. We have a C-clamp, I used some anti-seize and some brake caliper grease. We also got a hammer, a 32-ounce hammer, with a big ratchet there with a 19mm on the end of it, and there's a breaker bar. Also a 14mm wrench, a flathead screwdriver, and you'll also need a jack and jack stands along with your new brake pads and your new rotor as well. So with all that said, we'll go ahead and begin today's project. Okay guys, now the first thing you're going to want to do is we're going to want to lift up your car, and basically a good spot will be right over here and right over here, and basically it's hard to see what I'm lifting up on, but if we zoom right over here on the other side, we'll be able to see what I'm lifting up. You can see that little circular thing, and it's basically where you put a hook if you're trying to tow the car. It's a tough metal thing, so over there, it's at the end of my finger, it's that hook looking thing, and then there'll be another one right over here, and it'll be kind of, oh there we go, covered up by the plastic. There you go, now you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, so lift up on that thing, and as far as putting your jack stands up, come right over here, and right up under here, there's a ridge right here, and you can just kind of set your jack stand there. So that's where you'll lift it up, and then next, we got to remove our wheel once we get it lifted up, and to do that, you're going to take a flathead screwdriver and find your place wherever it may be, which for me is going to be right here. You're going to take a flathead screwdriver, see there's a slot right there, and you're going to stick your flathead screwdriver in there and just kind of pry it, and I'll show you that here in just a second when I take the wheel off. Okay guys, so here I got a flathead screwdriver. I'm just going to reach around and reach into that notch I was telling you about, and there you go, you just kind of pop them off there, and then take my impact in 21. And there we go, we'll just set our wheel off to the side. Okay guys, now the next thing we've got to do is we've got to get our caliper off so we can get our brake pads off. And in order to do that, we're going to take our 14mm combination wrench here, and we're just going to get our two caliper bolts off, which is here and here. So I'm going to get on here, and there we go, got them loosened up. And there we go. And now I'll just take my quick ratchet and I'll zap these guys off. There's one. And there's the other one. Now, next thing we'll do is we'll take that flathead screwdriver we got, reach in there, and we want to compress the caliper pistons. They're just a little bit so it'll be easier to remove this guy. So, yeah, find something you can pry against, and that might work right there. And now we can see I've loosened them up a little bit, and it's gonna make it a little bit easier to pull off here. So you can also just come under here with your flathead screwdriver and just kind of pry up like that. That'll help you. So now we're just gonna set this on top right there, and that's all you got to do in order to get to your brake pads. And to take your brake pads out, you're just gonna do what I'm doing right here. We're just gonna work on pulling them out. But to get to your rotor, we're gonna have to remove this bracket. So the next thing we'll do is we have two bolts sitting back here. They're gonna be 19mm. They're on there really good because they have these like locking washers there. So on the other side, I actually had to take my impact. So that's what you're gonna see me do. I'm just gonna reach back here with my impact and impact these two bolts out so we can get our bracket off. So then you can take your rotor off.
Alright, we have now reached the most important segment of this video. Please do not skip over this part of the video. It's important for you to hear what I've got to say about rotors, and it's important to assure that after you've done your brake repair, your car will be safe to drive. So we've got a few different options here when it comes to dealing with your rotors. You can either replace your rotor, have your rotor resurfaced, or you can keep and use your current rotor as is. Now, first I'm going to go over replacing the rotor. It is an absolute must to replace the rotor if its measurement is below the minimum thickness threshold to ensure your car is safe to drive. What I'm going to describe here in just a second, whether you want or don't want to replace the rotor, that's up to you. Affordability and comfort is at hand. But if it is below the minimum thickness threshold, there's no other way about it. You must replace the rotor. Okay, so now that we understand that, and here in just a second I'll show you how to measure it and be able to tell whether it's below the threshold or not. But now we're going to talk about turning your rotors. Now, there's a couple reasons you could turn your rotor, and that's to keep your present rotor, and you can pay about $10 to Napa or O'Reilly, where they have a brake lathe and they will turn your rotor for you. It's a cheaper option than buying a whole new rotor. And the reason you'd want to do that is if you've wore your brake pads down metal to metal and the metal pad is wedged in grooves there and it's all torn up, then you don't want to put new pads on that torn up surface with your old rotor. So you'd want to have your rotor resurfaced, and that's to ensure longevity for your new brake pads. The other reason to have your rotors resurfaced at a parts store is if you're having vibration problems with your rotors. That is, if you're driving down the highway and you apply the brake pedal and you feel your brake pedal vibrating. If you don't like that, that would be a good reason to have your rotors turned. But if you're really particular, just keep in mind that when the rotors are thinner, they're more likely to develop that warpage problem, because what happens is you'll be driving down the road, you'll run through a big puddle of water and the water will splash on the hot rotor and it'll warp the rotor. The thicker the rotor is, or the newer the rotor is, it's going to be less likely to develop this problem. So resurfacing the rotor, if you have that problem, will fix the problem, but it'll come back faster. So if you have the extra money and you really don't want that problem, you can go ahead and just throw money at it and just get a new rotor every time. But if you want to see the problem go away and risk it coming back or not, it may or may not come back, you can go ahead and turn it and get out of the situation cheaper and be more comfortable. Now the last option is to just keep your rotor and put new brake pads on. That is a very acceptable option, and that's what I do about 80% of the time. Again, as long as the rotor is above the minimum threshold, because if it's not going to be safe to drive. So it's okay to put new pads on your old rotor if it's smooth like this you can see right here. As long as it's a semi-smooth surface, you can go ahead and put the new brake pads on. It's really fine. So those are the three options that you have: replacing, resurfacing, or just keeping your old one. And again, most of the time, most people are just fine keeping their old rotor and putting new pads on top of their old rotor. One more thing I almost forgot to is rotors that cause vibration, they're safe to drive. It's just an uncomfortable thing. The unsafe thing is the below the minimum thickness, but rotors that cause vibration are safe to drive. And also, this minimum thickness number, if I don't tell you exactly what the number is here in just a second, you can find it at your parts store. They'll give you a discard thickness number on your rotor, so keep that in mind too.
Okay guys, so here we are, and again, the fasteners I'm removing here is there's one here and there's one right here. You're gonna see me stick my impact on there, and I'm just gonna kind of zap these guys right up. Okay guys, now I got both of these bolts out. They're gonna look like that right there. They're pretty big and hefty, and you can see they've got this washer that kind of helps lock them on there. Now with my impact, which removes like 500 foot-pounds or something, I actually wasn't able to get it off with just my impact. So it took the top one off just fine, but I took this big breaker bar in 19mm, and I was able to just kind of lift up, and I got it turning, and then I was able to put my impact on there and then remove it all the way. So once you get those two bolts out, you're gonna be able to grab this guy off right here, and you have two clips. You have a clip right here and a clip right here, and if they come off like that right there, then you just kind of reach back in here and push them back down in there when you get to install your new brake pads. So we're just gonna set our caliper bracket off to the side, and then we'll notice, well, this rotor doesn't just want to come right off. So what you'll do is you'll take your hammer, come behind here, and you're gonna spin it. And there we go. We're able to get them off like that. And guys, If it takes you longer than that and you weren't able to do it like I just did right there, do a YouTube search